The modern obsession with speed creates a fragile illusion of competence. A student believes skimming a lecture equates to knowledge, just as a young employee mistakes frantic activity for progress. This is a silent error that erodes potential from the inside out, building a life on shifting sand rather than solid ground. In the cold winter of 1643, a dying swordsman named Miyamoto Musashi identified this fatal flaw in the human spirit. He did not offer a shortcut to power, but demanded a return to the soil itself. Through the earth scroll of the Book of Five Rings, Musashi revealed that true mastery is not a sudden spark of genius, but a heavy, deliberate construction. He argued that without the rigid discipline of the carpenter and the grounding of the earth, all strategy is merely a performance that collapses under weight. To ignore this foundation is to remain perpetually amateur, forever chasing a horizon that recedes with every step. Understanding the architecture of this discipline requires stepping away from the noise of the present and into the silence of a stone chamber. The air inside the Regondo cave is heavy with the scent of wet limestone and stale incense. It is a darkness that feels physical, pressing against the skin, broken only by the erratic rhythm of water dripping from the ceiling onto the cold rock floor. In the center of this damp void sits Miyamoto Musashi. He is no longer the wild youth who decimated the Yoshioka school, nor the terrifying duelist who arrived late to Ganryu Island. He is 60 years old, his body ravaged by the sharp internal agony of thoracic cancer, his breathing labored and shallow in the thin cave air. The candlelight throws long, trembling shadows against the walls, mimicking the ghosts of the 60 men he cut down in his lifetime. Yet the brush in his hand does not tremble. It moves across the coarse washi paper with the same lethal precision as his blade once did. He is not here to die. He is here to distill. He realizes that his entire life of combat was not merely destruction, but a form of construction. He envisions the warrior not just as a killer, but as a master carpenter. He dips the brush into the inkstone, the smell of pine soot rising to meet him. He writes of the earth. He sees that just as a carpenter must know the grain of the cedar and the strength of the pine to build a temple that withstands typhoons, a strategist must understand the ground beneath his feet. He coughs a harsh sound that echoes off the stone, but his mind remains fixed on the metaphor of the house. A house with gaps in the floor, he writes, will leak. A strategy with gaps in discipline will fail. He meticulously details the tools of the trade, comparing the measurement of timber to the measurement of an enemy's intent. There is no romance here, only the brutal reality of physics and preparation. The cold seeps into his knees, stiffening the joints that once moved like water, but he forces himself to continue. He understands that the earth scroll must be the foundation of the five rings. For without the earth, there is no place for water to flow, fire to burn, or wind to blow. He is building a monument of words to replace the fleeting nature of flesh, carving the philosophy of the carpenter into history before the candle burns down to the wax. This solitude birthed a set of principles so demanding that they strip away all pretense and leave only what is essential for survival. Musashi names this first chapter the Earth Scroll, because Earth is the unmoving surface upon which all other elements must rely. Without the groundwater spills, fire has no fuel and wind has no corridor. In the mind of the master strategist, the warrior is indistinguishable from the master carpenter. This metaphor of the carpenter is not a poetic flourish, but a technical schematic for survival. A carpenter does not approach a build with vague intentions. He arrives with a blueprint, an understanding of the materials, and a complete intolerance for structural weakness. For Musashi, the battlefield was a construction site where the outcome was determined long before the first sword was drawn. The warrior who neglects the mundane details of his craft, the sharpening of the blade, the study of the terrain, the management of his own stamina, is like a builder who uses rotten wood for a support beam. The collapse is inevitable. The only variable is time. The 9 principles outlined in the Earth Scroll serve as the architect's level and plumb line. When Musashi writes that one must distinguish between gain and loss, he is demanding a cold calculation of resource allocation. Every move on the chessboard of combat costs energy and time. To invest these finite resources into an action that yields no strategic advantage is a violation of the precept to do nothing which is of no use. This is the essence of efficiency. It is the removal of the decorative and the superfluous until only the functional remains. Furthermore, the command to perceive those things which cannot be seen challenges the practitioner to look beyond the surface. A novice carpenter sees a tree. A master sees the beam inside the tree, the knot that will cause a break, and the direction of the grain. Similarly, the strategist must perceive the intent of the enemy hidden behind their posture. The core assertion that the way is in training dissolves the illusion of talent. Musashi posits that stability is manufactured through repetition. It is the boring, unglamorous layering of stone upon stone. There is no secret technique that bypasses the need for this foundation. The Earth Scroll is a rejection of the mystical in favor of the practical, asserting that the highest form of spirituality is grounded in the absolute reality of physical discipline and honest labor. To see how this ancient rigidity fractures under the weight of modern distraction, one need only look at the glowing screen of a 21st century workspace. The modern counterpart to the disciplined samurai is often a fragmented figure bathed in the blue light of a laptop screen. Consider the young professional or the ambitious student sitting in a cluttered room at 2 in the morning. The desk is a chaotic landscape of coffee cups and tangled wires reflecting a mind that is equally disorganized. There are 20 tabs open on the browser, a digital manifestation of a refusal to commit to a single task. This individual believes they are multitasking, convinced that frantic activity equates to productivity. They consume bite-sized content on productivity hacks and speed learning, seeking a way to bypass the slow grinding process of mastery. This person is attempting to build a skyscraper without digging a foundation. They operate entirely in the realm of wind, shifting formless and reactive without the grounding of earth. The silence that Musashi sought in the cave is replaced by a constant hum of notifications. Each ping from a smartphone fractures focus, pulling the mind away from deep work and into shallow engagement. The cost of this behavior is not immediately visible, like a wound from a sword, but it is cumulative and devastating. Over time, the lack of a central philosophy erodes confidence. The student feels a creeping anxiety, a sense that despite working 12 hours a day, nothing of substance has been achieved. They are busy, but they are not effective. They avoid the difficult, boring work of true training in favor of the dopamine hit provided by checking emails or scrolling through social media. This avoidance is a direct violation of Musashi's command to do not think dishonestly. They lie to themselves about their effort, mistaking movement for progress. By ignoring the precept to pay attention, even to trifles, they miss the small errors in their work or their health that eventually compound into failure. They are drifting unmoored, exhausted by the friction of their own inefficiency. Escaping this cycle of frantic stagnation requires a protocol that cuts through the noise like a blade through silk, demanding a return to zero. To dismantle the chaos of modern existence, the practitioner must adopt the Carpenter's blueprint, a rigid protocol designed to align daily action with the Earth Scroll. The cycle begins before the sun rises in the cold silence of the morning. This is the time for grounding. The protocol demands that the first action of the day is not consumption, but definition. The individual identifies one single non-negotiable task, the primary beam of the day's structure. Applying the principle to do not think dishonestly, the practitioner must look at this task and ask if it is truly essential or merely a comfortable distraction. There is no room for self-deception here. If the task does not bear weight, it is discarded. As the day progresses and the friction of the world increases, the protocol shifts to active pruning. The modern environment is a forest of vines and weeds manifested as notifications, emails, and trivial requests. The principle to do nothing, which is of no use, becomes a blade held constantly in the hand. Every time the urge arises to check a device or engage in gossip, the blade cuts it away. The practitioner views these small diversions not as harmless breaks, but as structural rot. Just as a carpenter would never leave a protruding nail to catch the skin, the disciplined mind leaves no loose ends. The phone is placed out of sight, transforming the workspace into a vacuum where only the work exists. The evening is reserved for maintenance, and the principle that the way is in training. When the sun sets, the focus moves from production to refinement. The protocol requires 15 minutes of deliberate study in a field outside one's expertise, honoring the command to know the ways of all professions. This is not relaxation. It is the sharpening of the tools. The day ends, not with a sigh of relief, but with a cold review of the performance, distinguishing clearly between what was gained and what was lost. The practitioner sleeps with the knowledge that the foundation is stronger than it was at dawn, ready to bear the weight of tomorrow. Yet even the most disciplined individual must eventually face the complexity of leading others, where the stakes are no longer just personal time, but the survival of the enterprise itself. In the high-stakes environment of modern business, the boardroom often mimics the tension of the feudal court. Imagine a project lead standing at the head of a heavy oak table, faced with a critical strategic divergence. The team is pushing for a rapid launch, a cosmetic update designed to capture immediate market attention, a flash of style without substance. This is the path of speed, appealing to the desire for quick metrics and visible wins. However, the leader who embodies the Earth Scroll recognizes this as a trap. To build a feature without fixing the underlying infrastructure is to build a castle on a swamp. Musashi warns that a commander must appreciate the large and the small with equal clarity. The principle to distinguish between gain and loss is applied here with ruthless pragmatism. The gain of a quick launch is visible and immediate, but the loss is hidden in catastrophic technical debt team burnout and a product that breaks under pressure. The leader chooses the unpopular path of the carpenter. They delay the launch to reinforce the code base, to train the staff, and to secure the supply chain. This decision is often met with resistance, for the work of the foundation is invisible to the outsider. Legend says that Musashi could defeat 30 men not because he swung faster, but because he controlled the space in which they moved. In the corporate sphere, this means controlling the timeline and the quality standards rather than reacting to the market's frantic pace. The leader applies the precept to perceive those things which cannot be seen, anticipating future market shifts that a fragile product could not withstand. By refusing to compromise on the structural integrity of the project, the leader ensures that when the storm comes, the organization remains standing while competitors who prioritize speed over earth watch their strategies collapse into ruin. With the foundation set and the structure secure, the final lesson of the Earth Scroll reveals itself not in the noise of battle, but in the quiet confidence of the aftermath. True mastery does not scream, it stands. When Miyamoto Musashi laid down his brush in the Reigondo cave, he understood that the sword was merely a branch, while the spirit was the root. The Earth Scroll is not simply a manual for combat, it is a manifesto for existence. Like a great cedar that withstands the typhoons of the coast, a human life must be anchored deep in the dark, unseen soil of discipline. The height of the canopy is strictly limited by the depth of the roots. If one ignores the earth to reach for the sun, the collapse is guaranteed. To walk this path is to accept that the most important work is done in silence, unseen by the crowd. It is to embrace the boredom of the grind and the ruthlessness of the pruning shear, cutting away every habit that does not bear fruit. Musashi left the comfort of the castle to find the truth in a damp cave, proving that comfort is the enemy of the way. The world will always offer shortcuts, glittering distractions, and easy paths across the surface. But the strategist knows that these are traps. As the scroll closes and the ink dries, the question remains suspended in the silence. When the storm eventually breaks, will you be the leaf that scatters in the wind, or the root that holds the earth?